All right, we want to follow up on some breaking news we brought you a few minutes ago out of Quebec, where Desjardins is now reporting that more than 2.9 million accounts have been compromised. The group says user information was shared outside the company due to illegal use of data by an employee. We'll explain what that means in a moment. But Desjardins says user data like names, dates of birth, and social insurance numbers may have been released. The employee responsible for the incident has since been fired, but we want to bring in cybersecurity expert Claudiu Popa for more on this. He's in studio. Hi, good to see you, Claudiu.
Hello.
So nearly 3 million people affected by this. How big of a hit is this for the company?
Well, I think it's a big hit for Canada and certainly Canada's financial sector. Anytime there's a massive breach of personal information, especially in the context of the financial industry, it's a big deal because it puts the focus on controls and safeguards that should be in place to protect individuals, and in this case, companies as well.
There is a distinction here, though, in that this wasn't a cyber attack. This wasn't, as you said earlier to me off camera, a leak per se. This sounds like an employee doing something for personal benefit, or we don't know the motive, but...
That's right. It's an individual with clearly too much access to the personal information of customers or members in this case. And apparently he took advantage of this access, collected the information, and shared it with an individual or individuals outside the organization.
So a compromised employee, how do companies like Desjardins, who runs credit unions, insurance, all of that, how do they safeguard against something like that?
Well, there's a number of safeguards that should be in place, and this is, again, a reminder for the industry as a whole. One issue is that no individual should have access to that, to customer information on that scale. That's a massive scale. People should, if in fact they need to know, they have to have access on an individual basis to customer accounts, not to 2 million or 3 million accounts like this. So it puts the focus on that. And of course, there are certain controls that are needed by members to identify themselves to the bank.
Right.
And in this case, some of those have gone along with the rest of the data.
So it surprised me to hear this because, you know, like you say, that's a lot of information for one person to have access to. You know, you even think of things like two-factor authentication or face password protection, right? But how would one person have gained access to so much information?
Well, there's a lot of insiders that unfortunately do in this day and age because controls are inadequate to protect the personal information of customers when you don't have a siloing method. So that siloing method allows organizations to limit the number of accounts that one has access to, and sometimes within a specific amount of time. So, for example, you can't access more than 10 people in 10 minutes. Right. So if someone were to do
all kinds of red flags are raised.
Exactly. So you do a massive search by pressing letter A, and then all those accounts with letter A and their name would come up. But this should not happen. So controls, internal controls, should exist against this.
Okay. Obviously, police are investigating, and I think charges are being laid, as we said. But what can consumers do? What can customers of Desjardins or clients of Desjardins do?
So they need to be aware of the fact that financial institutions and certainly the economy as a whole is adopting, as you mentioned, two-factor authentication. That should be a baseline requirement of all financial institutions to offer to their customers and their members. So if your passwords are compromised, then you should have no trouble getting in because you've got a second factor that is required. And Desjardins should offer that. Certainly, individuals, victims or not, should be vigilant about their personal information and any indication that it might have been compromised. We don't know who this data was shared with, but we need to watch out for phishing attacks. Phishing with a PH, unsolicited emails that come to your email address. Sometimes they'll pretend they're from Desjardins. Other times they'll leverage the fact that now they've got your social insurance number, your birth date, and your home address. This is a big deal because there's an identity theft component to this, and people should be aware.
Be aware. Claudiu, always good to have you in.